The people in charge of the rankings are delusional that Mario Cristobal is a great coach, because he's not. He's not good at all. This year, they have Carson Beck as quarterback. He's not good. I think Carson Beck was great because Georgia is such a great program.
Today we have a special guest, Steven Pulizzotto. We were just looking at these college football rankings here, one of the first preseason polls. Some self-explanatory teams in the right track, I guess you could say, on this list, but man, there's some weird ones.
Yeah, definitely agree. Looking at the top three just off the bat here, Texas, Ohio State, and then Penn State. Texas, clearly the number one team for a lot of reasons. The biggest topic probably that everyone talks about is Arch Manning. Saw him a little bit last year, a lot of run plays, strong, aggressive, but really haven't seen him play a bunch of real teams. I know last year he played when Ewers was injured, but it was usually versus teams either unranked or I think probably an FBS team was probably in there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his experience, you're right, a lot of his experience comes late in games, kind of when Quinn Ewers was out. I think he started a couple, but yeah, I think you're right. He didn't really play against some tough competition, but his first game of the year will be probably against the number two on this list. The toughest team that they might play this year is Ohio State, so he's going to get tested right off the bat here. We'll be able to see what he's all about, so that's always fun, especially week one. There's a lot of good week one games, but so moving to number two, it is Ohio State on this list, followed by Penn State, which should be an interesting matchup. Obviously, both those teams are in the Big Ten. We'll be able to see them play a conference game, but the 2 and the 3 team in the country, according to this poll, will be Ohio State and Penn State. That game, I'm actually going to that game, so it should be a lot of fun to watch, but it might mean a lot in terms of rankings, playoff anticipation for both the teams. So those two teams are going to look to dethrone one another. Those are the two top teams, according to this, for the Big Ten. But so moving on, we have number 4 is Clemson. I think that one is a little questionable, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think Clemson extremely highly ranked this year, mainly because of Cade Klubnik. Everybody's talking about him, the hype of him coming back. Dabo, I believe, used some of the transfer portal this year, but, if you follow college football a lot, Dabo is usually recruiting only, no transfer portal. So it'll be interesting. All the hype I hear is all about, Cade, best quarterback out there. Outside of Arch Manning, obviously, reporters on the SEC network were comparing him to Tim Tebow, if you saw that. But yeah, outside of Arch Manning, Cade is projected to be a top quarterback, but we'll have to see. I was looking at Clemson's schedule this year. Typical ACC, pretty much a cakewalk. I think Clemson, well, they are the favorite to win the ACC, but I feel like they'll win it without any issues. And we'll just see how Cade performs. But 4, I feel like, might be a little bit of an over-ranking, but time will tell.
Right, and I think a lot of what you said here in terms of the transfer portal is true. I think now they kind of dipped into the transfer portal. I don't think it could have gone for too long with Dabo not trying to get in the portal, but that's the game of college football nowadays. Who can you steal from other teams? But so moving on to number 5 here, we have Georgia, which to me seems a little low. Obviously, they have Carson Beck leaving, but Gunnar Stockton is going to take over for Carson Beck. We saw Gunnar Stockton play in that bowl game that they played. It'll be interesting to see where they land at the end of the year. I think they might be a little up in the air in terms of predictions here, but what is your prediction for Georgia?
Yeah, I feel like Georgia ranked relatively low of what we're all used to seeing. I feel like 5 is an appropriate rank at the moment. They're definitely going to be, Texas will be the favorite for the SEC, but we saw it last year. Georgia beat them twice, right? They beat them once in the regular season, and then they beat them in the SEC championship game when Carson Beck went down, and Gunner took control and won. So we'll have to see how Georgia plays this year. It's Georgia, right? Any program at that caliber, they're going to recruit at a high level, and just, their bench player could start on any other team. So I think rank 5 is going to be fine for now, but let's see how Gunner is, just like Arch last year when he played a couple snaps. We got an idea, but let's see how Kirby and the team form a roster around him.
A lot of these teams have high-star guys that they stash anyway, and Kirby Smart always gives you a fighting chance, so we'll have to see with them.
Georgia, it's kind of like the Ohio State, and we'll talk about Alabama in a minute, but, Georgia is going to be like Ohio State, where they're always recruiting. They have plenty of great players, but it's like new quarterback, right? So we'll see how Georgia, Ohio State, and then we'll talk about Bama. But those are just those teams that they just keep reloading year over year, and then you think that, they're 2 or 3 on the depth chart, but they're actually a number 1 player. They just couldn't see the field because there was better talent out there at the time.
Every SEC team's going to have studs. That's just kind of what we're going to expect out of a conference like that. But moving on to number 6, Notre Dame. Obviously a loss in the national championship. They lose their starting quarterback, Riley Leonard, but they return Jeremiah Love, who is one of the best, if not the best, running back in the country. So some high expectations here.
Yeah. Notre Dame's Notre Dame.
Right.
Really don't have an opinion on this team. No quarterback this year. Their original quarterback transferred, went to the draft, I'm pretty sure. But they don't really have a starting quarterback just yet at the time of when we're recording this. So more to come there. But I think Notre Dame will do Notre Dame things. Probably end up going 11-1, 10-2. I don't know about undefeated. I'll have to check the schedule, but we'll probably see them in there. They'll be a top 12 team. As long as they don't lose more than 1 or 2 games, they'll be back in the playoff again. Probably going to host that home playoff game, and it'll be Notre Dame. So
Stephen Jelly transfers from Notre Dame to Syracuse. But so moving on to number 7, Oregon, another Big Ten team here. They lose Dylan Gabriel. Dante Moore seems like he's going to be the starter for them. What do we expect from them this year?
Yeah, I think Oregon will be pretty solid. I think they'll be a top 10 team for a while unless they have a huge loss. People forget last year that Oregon, they had an amazing team, but all of their credit just kind of got taken away when Ohio State just went on essentially a March Madness run. They lose to Michigan once again, and then you think that, Ryan Day, they're done for. They'll probably be a first round, and then they go on just a generational you just win the whole thing. But it's like they played Oregon, and people just forget that Oregon was a really great team. They just ended up, honestly, in my opinion, getting punished to play Ohio State again because they played Penn State in the Big Ten. They won their conference, and then who was waiting for them? Ohio State after the first round. So Oregon was a great team last year. Unfortunately, they ran into Ohio State after a huge Michigan loss, and then they ran the table. But yeah, Oregon will be a great team. They'll be the 3rd favorite in the Big Ten. And once we get a look at their schedule, we'll probably be able to do a better projection on that. But yeah, Oregon, top 12 team, at least.
So number 8 is LSU, led by returning starter Grant Nussmeier.
Let me stop you there. Hold on. This is my thing. LSU, I love Louisiana State. Great program. Death Valley's amazing. The entire atmosphere is crazy. This is the issue here. It's going to be Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly, his time I think is coming up here. He's definitely on the hot seat. I remember a couple of years ago he did 0 defensive recruiting. I think they were ranked last, in defense, and they had Jaden Daniels on the team that year.
Yeah.
They had Jaden Daniels, and they couldn't do anything, right? This year, Brian Kelly comes back. I see the cards, they put those posters up on the internet saying, I think this is the best class I ever recruited. We'll see. LSU's schedule is going to be, of course, tough. Garrett Nussmeier returns. I saw their social media saying, he's back. I think he had to come back because no one wanted to draft him, in my opinion. That's my biggest thing with LSU is that you have Garrett Nussmeier, who I think is a middle-of-the-road quarterback. I don't think he's a top-5 quarterback, but this year the quarterback rankings I feel like are a little slim at the moment, so I guess he's top 5. And then Brian Kelly, who I feel LSU has just been stuck ever since Coach O was fired. So again, LSU, a great program. I really hope they are a top 10 team in the future, but this year I feel like they're going to be ranking them top 10. They're going to have, one or two huge losses, which is going to dock them from the rankings. They say LSU is going to be a contender for the SEC. I think it's going to be between Texas and Georgia again. I do have some takes on Alabama, but those are going to be the top 2. So LSU, I just don't think there's any room for the table this year, especially if they have, say end up with 3 or 4 losses. I don't think they'll be making the playoff.
We have high-low rankings on this list here, so their high is 6 and their low is 15. So that means that somebody rated them a 15, so we'll have to wait and see with them. But moving on to number 9, Alabama. I know you have a lot to say on this, so take it away.
The Crimson Tide. So with Alabama, obviously everybody knows that Milroe is no longer the quarterback, so they will be looking at their backup. As of now, Ty Simpson is going to be their starter, so we'll have to see where they go from there. But with Alabama, from the reports that I've been seeing on social media, they have been really hitting the recruiting hard. So this year, I think they're going to be a solid team. I think they'll be a top 10 team, and I do think they will be making the playoffs. I think they're going to have a real run at an SEC championship. I do believe they'll be able to play in that championship game as well. So I think Alabama's going to have a really strong team. They have, of course, that freshman or now sophomore receiver Williams, who is going to be, lights out as always. I feel like if they figure out the quarterback situation, they'll be a pretty solid team, but I'll be circling them next year because they're pulling in a lot of 2026 recruits. So DeBoer, he's great at recruiting. He's pulling them in, but let's see this year. I know Alabama fans are used to winning all the time, so I think missing the playoffs again this year is going to be a real, hot seat, if you will, because they're so used to just always being in contention.
But so last one we'll do here, this will complete the top 10 of this list. Miami, who loses Cam Ward. Mario Cristobal is still there, obviously, as their head coach. Seeing them at 10 for me is a little confusing, to be honest with you. They're a great team. They lose their number 1 wide receiver from last year and obviously, Heisman candidate quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. But
this is why they're ranked number 10. I have the answer. Because the people in charge of the rankings are delusional that Mario Cristobal is a great coach. Because he's not. He's not good at all. This year, they have Carson Beck as quarterback. He's not good. I think Carson Beck was great because Georgia is such a great program, right? Look at Milroe. I felt like Milroe wasn't good last year, but he could have been a lot worse if he played for a really bad team. When you have a bunch of 5 and 4 stars all around you, it's going to make you look great. I feel like Carson Beck now in Miami, it's going to be completely different. They do not have the same recruits as Georgia, so he's going to actually have to play a little bit more. I think Miami at 10, fraudulent. Again, ACC schedule, they're going to be, I'm assuming here they'll be the second favorite behind Clemson. I think the last time I checked, we had Clemson 1, 2 was Miami, and 3 was Louisville. So again, Miami, I feel like with their schedule, they'll probably end up going 10-2, but I think at the end of the day, they're going to miss the playoff because I think we're going to be having some teams that are ranked at 11-15 right now that might have a great season, kind of like SMU last year. They kind of just came out of nowhere and had a seat at the table. So again, I don't think Miami's going to be great. Again, I feel like they're also stuck. They have a transfer quarterback, Carson Beck, who's middle of the road, and the recruiting has been, I would say, middle of the road.
So to put you on the spot, if you had to take an early national champion, an early pick for national champion, who would it be?
I'm going to go Clemson. I'm going to take Clemson. I feel like everyone's going to pick Texas to do it, but I feel like Clemson has the best chance just because of the way that their schedule is going to be laid out. They'll have the easiest path in that conference. They'll be of course, getting one of the first four byes. I feel like they'll get a pretty easy team to play, and then they'll probably have to play really one extremely hard team in that final four before going to the championship. So as of now, I feel like Clemson would be my pick.
I'm going to be unoriginal here and go with Texas. After being so close last year and getting that taste, I think they could do it again.
It's all about the returning production. So I feel like Texas and Clemson are up there with returning players. If you were looking, someone listening that was saying, what about Ohio State? They're always in there. Penn State. Ohio State doesn't really have a quarterback just yet. We need to actually see some play there. And then, Penn State, they're going to be 10-2 again, like they are every year. So I don't think Penn State will do it. I think Drew Aller is also a pretty middle-of-the-road quarterback as well. I think last year we were watching one of the games. I'm pretty sure they didn't even use a wide receiver in one of their games. It was just the tight end.
Yeah.
So, again, I can't see Penn State, going far. And Ohio State, we have to see on quarterback situation, just like Alabama. We need to see a couple games. And you were mentioning earlier, too, the Penn State game that you'll be going to versus Ohio State, that could be a pretty big season game, especially if Texas does upset Ohio State at home. Right now, I believe Ohio State was favored at about 3.5. If Texas pulls the upset, Ohio State, yes, it is not a conference loss, but it is still one loss. So Penn State, Ohio State's going to be a super big game towards the end of the year.
Yeah, that game will be huge. Looking back at our sheet, who do you think gets left out of the top 10?
A couple teams that weren't in the top 10. I'm not saying they should be, but they could be there. Of course, it's Florida. I'm not going to hype up Lagway here because, I know a couple of flash in the pans last year that he looked like an all-star quarterback, but then ended up sometimes bottoming out. I think the Florida team is going to be good. I don't think they'll be at that great tier, but I think Florida's going to be a really good team. Just like last year, I feel like, their schedule is, again, extremely tough. I'm pretty sure they have, two, random bad teams to start the year. I know Long Island University is on there, but after that, it's going to be the gauntlet for them all year. So, a lot of people say, you are what your schedule says you are. I don't really believe in that with the Florida team because I feel like if they do go, I don't know, like say 7-5 or 8-4, I feel like they're just a better team, but they're just not here with the schedule. So I guess Florida could be a top 10 team. Wouldn't expect it. Two more teams I want to just briefly cover. One of them is South Carolina. Of course, they have Sellers as quarterback. The rest of the team, however, is just, again, middle of the road. I think South Carolina could be a great team, but if all they have is a quarterback, I think it'll be like a Jaden Daniels situation at LSU where South Carolina just can't climb the ladder. And the other team, Louisville, have to mention them. On this rank, they have them at 23. I feel like Braum has been doing a good job doing the recruiting, and I think Louisville has a very, very, very easy schedule at the ACC. I was looking over it a lot with a couple of my friends. Honestly, looking at their schedule, I think it's 11-1, honestly. 10-2, I feel like should be their goal and basically their floor, but 11-1 is really in range. So if the Cards can string a couple wins together and be consistent with their play calling, I feel like they'd be up in that top 10, honestly a playoff team if they can really figure it out and beat the teams they need to beat.
That would be interesting to see that ACC matchup between Clemson and Louisville. So MLB fans, listen up. As the Yankees fan of the show, what should we be looking at for the Yankees going into the All-Star break and specifically the deadline? What moves do you think?
Yep. So, here we are coming up to the All-Star break. Starting tomorrow's the Home Run Derby. The Yanks started the year good. Then they got extremely hot, boat racing everybody in the AL East. And then recently now they just can't win games. They can't string them along. They're going on losing streaks. They'll get a win or two, keep losing. The injuries are also piling up. But I feel like there's a lot to unpack here. Just all the way around. So a couple things I can start with. Of course, if we remember all the way in the beginning of the season, Garrett Cole ended up being out for the year. So Garrett Cole was scratched. They did put Max Fried and Carlos Rodon. He was there last year, wasn't super great, but Carlos Rodon this year has been doing great. I believe he's at 10-6 for the year. And then Max Fried, of course, a huge pickup, who is an all-star. He's 11-3 with a sub 2.4 ERA. Max Fried, a great player. I know if you're watching now, you're probably going to see that Max Fried was scratched from the game. Well, he played a little bit yesterday, got scratched due to a blister on his hand. So, classic Yankees. He had a blister on his finger. He did not pitch the full game yesterday, and I believe he is also scratched from the All-Star game as well. Not a huge deal. He got his selection. He does not need to play. He needs to be healthy for the rest of the year. That's a quick summary of the pitching. Now, this is where we are. Aaron Boone, not a good coach. I've been saying now for the last 2 seasons they should have fired him already. Every year the Yankees keep reloading and signing really, really big-name players, and they can't win the big one. You know, they finally made it to the World Series last year, and honestly, in embarrassing fashion, lost to the Dodgers. Aaron Judge was a no-show once again in the postseason. Giancarlo Stanton, just, you know, he's an all-star when it comes to the playoffs. And then our pitching just kind of collapsed at the end of the year because our pitching depth was not as deep as the Dodgers. So, you know, coming off of these last couple seasons here, I think Boone is going to be on the hot seat. I'm going to be a typical Yankee fan here and say it's championship or bust once again. You reached the World Series last year, and you have almost the same team, but even better. Obviously, you lose Garrett Cole, but you gain Max Fried. We have the Airbender as our closer now. I believe he came from Milwaukee. And, we're sitting with a team currently 53-42 right before the All-Star break, depending on how this game goes today with the Cubs. And you're a couple games behind in the AL East to the Blue Jays, okay? So I feel like the Yankees are kind of at a big time to buy in the trade deadline, which I'm going to cover here in a minute, but I feel like State of Union, if I had to address everybody, they need to win a championship this year, or we need to start blowing up the team a little bit. Looking into what the Yankees need, right? I can start here by saying the other day they did DFA DJ LeMahieu. Utility player, but he was really someone that was playing third base, since that is a player that we need, or a position that we need. DJ, great player. Always liked him. His hitting a couple years ago was fantastic. Always making contact with the ball, never getting into double plays. But unfortunately, his injuries hasn't been super consistent until recently. They had to let him go, which I understand. If they haven't won with him yet, you might as well cut him. So we'll have to see there. Now, with that being said, what is going on? As of now, Jazz Chisholm, all-star selection for the home run derby. He's been playing third base a little bit. And also splitting time with him was Oswaldo Perez. Again, a lot of this infield has been splitting time with each other. You're going to play second, third, shortstop, right? They're just kind of all over the place at the moment. So a couple things to look forward to with the trade deadline, which I'm really hoping the Yankees do, is, of course, look for a third baseman and then pitching. First thing is we'll talk about the serious trade, right? So before I talk about a pitcher that I want, let's talk about third baseman. So reading, a lot of stuff of what the Yankees are looking for, and that's going to be a third baseman from, I believe now he's on the Cardinals, is going to be Nolan Arenado. Yes. And really, to get him right, I know the Rockies still owe his some money. The Cardinals are going to have to pay him a little bit money, but a couple notes that I took of, who could, we can trade away for. I'm thinking about 2 prospects. We have couple top 10 prospects. One of them was a shortstop. One of them was a left-handed pitcher who I think the Yankees would deal. And then Oswaldo Perez, they'll probably have to deal him. So if we give up two potential prospects with Oswaldo, I feel like they're able to get Nolan Arenado. But again, he's probably the most serious person that I think the Yankees are going to go after to fill that third base hole, which that would be ideal because at least we'll have a better infield. The outfield is, of course, solid. It's the infield. We need that third baseman. One trade, which everybody talks about it, and they're delusional. Dealing for Paul Skeens would be a huge pickup. Of course, I'm going to say they need Paul Skeens. I've seen so many tweets out there with, I think this morning I read his last win was in May. Okay. He has 4 wins this year. Okay.
Unbelievable.
He is top 10 in almost every statistic out there this year. His ERA is unbelievable. The Pirates just can't win, right? I know there were some articles about the Pirates front office and manager. They were saying, oh, we're not dealing him. We're going to keep him. I think Paul is pretty frustrated in Pittsburgh at the moment because he's really wasting a lot of good time.
Now is the time.
And I feel like now the Pirates, they want to keep him, but why? You can get a load for him right now. I drew up a couple ideas here of what the Yankees could deal. It's going to be everything. I feel like the Yankees, they don't really use their prospects a lot. They sign big name players and then they will promote, but sometimes they're not consistent. So I'm thinking about dealing a couple players here. Luis Gil, he's currently in AA right now. He's rehabbing. I believe he was last year, great pitcher. But with Luis, I think we should deal him away. If they want a replacement for Paul Skeens, I feel like he's already MLB ready going through rehab. Today, he pitched about 50 pitches today for the AA team. He'll be ready to go for the Yankees in the next couple days unless they trade for him. So I think we can trade him. A couple prospects I had in mind. Spencer Jones, outfielder, number 2 ranked prospect. Spencer Jones is, I would say, pretty equivalent to Aaron Judge with batting. He is someone that strikes out a lot, but he also hits a lot of home runs. So I feel like Spencer Jones would be a great person to trade. And another pitcher, Ben Hess, number 3 prospect, right-handed pitcher, a lot of strikeouts. A little inconsistent, but I think he has the potential to do it. 2 other players to trade for him. Jason Dominguez, outfielder. The Martian has been a great player this year. We can deal him. That's fine. And then also Anthony Volpe. He's whatever, honestly. I feel like this year Volpe has taken a little bit of a step back. Some bad throws at shortstop. Hitting has been average. But I feel like if we give away, 2 prospects, our pitcher in rehab, and then, of course, Dominguez and Volpe, I feel like that is more than enough for getting Skeens in New York. That would be huge if they can pull that off. That would really help with Garrett Cole being out. But more to come with that trade. I'm reading all these rumors online. I saw Olivia Dunn was looking at apartments in New York City, and it has you wondering, it's not to the Mets, right? It has to be to the Yankees. So I'm going off of those conspiracy theories with Olivia Dunn looking into New York City so Paul can live in the city and be a Yankee, but we'll have to see what happens. Again, the Pirates are saying that he is not up to be traded, but money talks, and especially if they're getting an absolute haul for him, I think the Pirates are just going to say, you can walk. But with that being said, if the Yankees do trade for him and they do give away all of these prospects, they need to sign Paul Skeens for whatever it takes, because I do not want to be in a situation where we trade away the farm and players for Paul Skeens, and then it turns out we're in a bidding battle with the Mets, the Dodgers, and they're offering, let's just say, $350 million, but the Yankees fall short at $340. We can't have that happen. If you're going to give away everybody, you have to be prepared to give them that blank check.
So a lot of the times I've hear of a Yankees trade, it's going to be with Jason Dominguez or even Volpe. I remember 2 years ago when Volpe first came up, everybody thought he was going to be Jeter. I think now the expectation has kind of settled down a little bit. Explain those two guys specifically because those are everyday players for the Yankees. Explain why, well, obviously Paul Skeens is one of those guys that you got to send the house for. But explain specifically Volpe, Dominguez. Obviously, both of them, specifically Dominguez, has been playing well this year. Kind of explain that.
Yeah. So starting with Jason Dominguez, of course, top prospect, the Martian. They were relating him, when he was in AA, AAA ball. They're saying, he's basically Aaron Judge. Not as big, but he just mashes home runs. I feel like Jason Dominguez, just a great overall player. When it comes to outfield, very quick out there, has a decent arm, but I really love the hitting from him. His hitting is top tier on the Yankees so far, especially with the kind of like the losing streak they've been on. Jason Dominguez, just an all-around great team player, great hitter, and I feel like he's so young to where if they do deal for Paul Skeens, Jason Dominguez would be a great fit for the Pirates because, honestly, the Pirates really don't have anybody, so I feel like he'd be a top 3 player, right after being traded. So Jason Dominguez, personally, is my favorite. It would hurt to have Jason Dominguez leave, but I understand. Now, Volpe, I really don't mind if he goes. Anthony Volpe, great shortstop from, Jeter retires, don't really have an official shortstop. They finally call up Volpe, who was doing great in the minor leagues, and now he's been at Yankee Stadium. And the hype of him, people comparing him to the next Jeter is not going to happen there, right? He's an average shortstop. In the league, there's a lot of better shortstops, but he's been fine for the team, right? He's been good, but I feel like his time is going to be almost up. The Yankees will need to find a different shortstop in due time, but I feel like they'll want to deal him. So I feel like Volpe, great batter, great infielder, but very inconsistent. And again, he's not as good as he was last year. He's kind of hitting that slump. Kind of reminds me of Gleyber Torres when he was playing for the Yankees. Gleyber Torres, great rookie, mashing home runs, but his time kind of stalled out, and they eventually dealt him. So I feel like Volpe might be on that same track as Gleyber.
So, yeah, I would expect to watch the Yankees be aggressive this trade deadline. Like you said, it's either championship or bust for the Yankees, and a pitcher like Paul Skeens would definitely put them in the top of, if they are not already, put them in the top of the World Series winner category.
Yeah. So we got the trade deadline coming up at the end of this month. So, looking ahead of what the Yankees are going to be facing. So we have the Cubs as of now. Looks like they're losing, so so that'll be it before the All-Star break. So after that loss, pretty serious couple games going into the trade deadline. So after the All-Star break, they have a series at the Braves. Would be nice to win that for a couple wins, but this is where it gets super important. They're going to be at Toronto. So right now, the Blue Jays are currently leading the AL East. The Yankees have to win 2 out of the 3 minimum to gain some traction. After at Toronto, then they're going to be back at home, which is going to be home to Philly. Always a great series. Again, they're in the NL, not super important for us, but it's going to be nice to see them playing a pretty decent team. But if they can win that, then it's going to be a long series. Tampa Bay is going to be going to Yankee Stadium, 4-game series. They have to go 3 out of 4, especially it's the AL East. So those are going to be the matchups going into the trade deadline. Hopefully we can get some players for it. It also doesn't hurt. I know I didn't talk about pitching that much, just Paul Skeens, but it would be nice to have another reliever in there. But mainly a third baseman and a starting pitcher would be huge for the Yankees. Then there's the trade deadline. And then after that, they're going to be at Miami. So I'll be at that. I'll be at those games, but it's in August, so not really that important. But it's after the trade deadline, so who knows what happens after that. But
so Aaron Judge gets career home run number 350 just the other day. Cal Raleigh is on pace to break Barry Bonds' record. It seems both these guys are on a collision course for MVP. Who do you think pulls it out?
hot take here. I still think Judge is going to be the favorite for the MVP. He just hit home run number 350. I know that, the Mariners catcher here is doing great, leading the home run race and all, but let's not forget, I was watching the game the other night, and Judge was out to bat, hit a sac fly to win the game. And again, this is the Mariners when they were up 5-0 in the eighth inning. They're actually throwing a no-hitter, and then they choked and lost. They actually could have saved the game if their all-star catcher would have made the tag. The ball got there plenty of time, completely whiffed the tag on Volpe, and the Yankees won. So I don't know. Don't think he's, that great, but I do think he's going to win the home run derby, and he's having a great season. But I still think Judge will be the favorite there. But home run derby is going to be pretty chalk, in my opinion. I believe is this year going to be at Atlanta?
So this year is in Atlanta, yeah.
Okay. Not bad. Haven't been, but decent field. It's better than most places. However, I did miss when they had the home run derby in Seattle or where the Rockies played. That's always fun. But
watch the balls fly.
But yeah, Atlanta's going to be a fun time. Home run derby, of course, must watch. But for the All-Star game, it'll be cool. Nothing really to report there. Everybody only plays an inning or so.
It'll be fun to watch Scooble and Skeens go head-to-head for a couple innings. But before you go, I need to ask you about your New York Jets and what are your expectations for the season with Justin Fields? We have a mutual friend, and he's pretty excited about the Jets this season. So give me your take.
So here's the deal. This friend that we're talking about, he sometimes think I'm way too crazy and absurd with my picks, but I'm rational here, okay? Here's the truth. The Jets last year was an absolute dumpster fire. I don't need to go back and talk all about what happened. Looking forward, this is what needs to be done. They started the year hiring Aaron Glenn as their head coach. I know there were a lot of other options out there. I know, Ben Johnson was available. The thing is, some of the Bears, some of these other teams already had their coaches locked up because they had a lot more selling points, right? The Bears' job was way better looking because they had Caleb Williams, a fresh, rookie quarterback that has that potential, right? The Jets, if you want to coach the Jets, you're coming into an organization that not only is cursed, but you're going into a team where now they don't have a quarterback, right? Aaron Rodgers leaves. You don't have anything, right? I mean, you have Garrett Wilson, you have Breece Hall, but outside of that, it's just kind of like, let's put all of Rodgers' friends out there and we'll call it a day.
Right.
So of course they all leave, right? You have Devontae Adams leave. I think Old Man Cobb is still there. I don't know, maybe they cut him, but they have all of these old Packers who are just, for what reason, right? There's no reason for them to be there. So I feel like this year, looking ahead into the season, last year they finished 5-12. This year, I'm really hoping, you can't go 500 anymore, right? So I was hoping for at least one over 500. In my book, that would be amazing. 5 wins last year was just absurd for, what the hype was behind them. But this year, if we can get to, 8 wins, 9 wins, that's all I want. If we can show some real progression, but at the same time, if they end up with 5 wins again, I would understand, right? If they have 5 wins again, you have Justin Fields, you have the new coach, you have some new drafted players. The one thing that's very important, which I hope Aaron Glenn establishes, is to use Justin Fields as a dual threat quarterback, right? When watching Justin Fields at Ohio State, he was balling out, throwing, running. If the Jets can go away from the traditional pocket passer offense and they do that dual threat, I think the Jets will be a really great team. You don't need to do, gunslinging 50-yard throws every time. I feel like if the Jets can just establish a sustainable drive, the team will be really good. Let's use Garrett Wilson on 5 or 10-yard routes, right? We don't need to have him go 30 yards from then to come back, right? Let's have him run 5 or 10 yards. Let's really power the run with Breece Hall. And honestly, you can even let Justin Fields run the ball too. I mean, let's really just use all of our players. So I feel like the offense will be a lot different, and I hope Aaron Glenn can change the way that they're establishing drives, because last year I felt like all I'm doing is watching them kick the ball on 4th down. The defensive side, the only person I want to highlight here no one has been talking about him as much, but Malik Moore from Alabama, I believe. Safety, I think he's going to be huge on our defense. I felt like last year the defense was just getting gashed left and right, which was crazy because, we had a lot of returning players, but they all ended up not being good. Some of them left. We did have a couple new additions, but mainly want to emphasize Malachi Moore is going to be huge in the safety position. And, like I said, more to come. The next couple days here, training camp will be starting here. We're going to take a look at the team. We're going to really see those really nice social media clips of Justin Field throwing dots every play without the pads on. So, no, it'll be good. I feel like, if we ever talk, NFL again, maybe it could be, after a couple weeks of the football season. But right now, just kind of staying neutral with the takes. I just feel like we need to see some product on the field first, because I can see where Aaron Glenn is looking to take them. But this year's a huge year to just start building it and maybe gaining some player confidence going into next year, which if this year they go close to 500 or a little bit below, I feel like next year needs to be a winning season or at least a chance to make a playoff run.
Well, NFL's right around the corner. Steven, thanks for coming on. We'll be talking to you in a couple weeks about NFL, so look forward to it, buddy.